Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, today we are diving deep into the hidden machinery of your mind to figure out why, despite our absolute best intentions, we so often fail to stick to our habits. We're going to unpack the neuroscience of delayed decision-making, explore this fascinating thing called the 500-millisecond glitch, and best of all, learn exactly how to rewire your neural autopilot. Let's get right into it.
So let me kick things off with a question that honestly might ruffle a few feathers. Are you truly in control? See, most of us walk through our daily lives operating under what neuroscientists call the CEO illusion. You know the feeling? You genuinely believe that yourself, that conscious inner voice narrating your day right now, is the executive director calling all the shots. You think, hey, I decide to act, and then I act. Sounds logical, right? But, well, 26 years of applied neuroscience research tells a very different story. It turns out the vast majority of our behavior actually originates deep, deep below the level of our conscious awareness.
Just chew on this rather unsettling reality for a second. You are likely the last person to know what you're doing. Crazy, isn't it? It's a bit jarring, but think about it. Imagine you're standing in a room and someone unexpectedly whips a baseball right at your face. What happens? You flinch, you throw your hands up, and you block it. All before you even fully process what on earth just happened. You didn't consciously decide to move your arms. Your brain executed a pure survival instinct in less than 200 milliseconds. Your rational mind? It's just playing catch-up after the fact, kind of inventing a story to explain an action that your deeper brain structures already set in motion.
And that brings us perfectly to the core concept of this explainer, the 500-millisecond glitch. This is a very real neurological reality where your brain decides your next move before your conscious mind even joins the conversation. Literally. And look, this biological delay is not just some quirky piece of cocktail party trivia. It's actually the fundamental root reason why we repeatedly act against our own best interest and fall right back into self-destructive habits. I mean, we often feel like passengers in our own lives because, well, for that first half second, we literally are. The discovery of this glitch all traces back to a really famous, almost legendary series of scientific experiments conducted by a researcher named Benjamin Libet. Libet set out to solve a massive scientific mystery. He wanted to track the exact millisecond physical brain activity began in a person and then compare it to the exact moment that person consciously said they had decided to act. Basically, he was hunting for the starting line of human intention.
And man, what he found absolutely turned the neuroscience world upside down. Libet discovered this phenomenon called the readiness potential. What is that? It's a massive surge of electrical activity in your brain that actually fires milliseconds before you are even aware that you're going to move. To be specific, your brain initiates the electrical impulse to act roughly 200 to 500 milliseconds before you register any conscious intention to do so. So by the time you consciously think to yourself, I'm going to reach for that chocolate chip cookie, your nervous system has already sent the signal down your arm. You aren't actually initiating the movement. You are just observing an impulse that has already begun. Wild, right?
To really grasp why this glitch happens, we need to look under the hood at the anatomy of your decision-making. Basically, your actions are the output of three interacting brain systems, and they operate at wildly different speeds. Up at the top, you've got your survival circuits, the amygdala and brainstem. These guys are blisteringly fast, firing in under 200 milliseconds. Think of this like lightning-fast fiber optic internet. Then, sitting in the middle, you have your emotional and habitual systems, the limbic system and basal ganglia. These clock in right at that 200 to 500 millisecond window. That right there, that is the exact window of our glitch. And finally, down at the bottom is your rational choice system in the prefrontal cortex. Now, it's highly sophisticated, sure, but it is hopelessly slow, taking 1 to 3 full seconds to formulate a conscious response. It's basically a 1990s dial-up modem trying to stream 4K video. It just can't keep up.
Now, the crucial thing to understand here, and this should relieve some of that guilt you might be feeling, is that this speed hierarchy is actually an evolutionary masterpiece. Seriously, if a predator jumped out of the brush 10,000 years ago, you couldn't afford to wait 3 whole seconds for your prefrontal cortex to logically analyze the pros and cons of running away. You needed your amygdala to hijack your body instantly. But today, well, this exact same brilliant system is kind of a modern nightmare. Your brain literally doesn't know the difference between a hungry predator and a super stressful email from your boss. So your fast-acting circuits hijack the pathway, and boom, you send a defensive, snappy reply way before your rational mind can step in and say, hey, maybe let's not hit send on that.
And the craziest part? This isn't just happening during high-stress moments. A staggering 40 to 45% of your daily behavior is not active decision-making. It is simply automated routine.
nearly half your day. Why? Because conscious deliberation in that slow prefrontal cortex is incredibly expensive in terms of metabolic energy, specifically glucose and oxygen. Your brain is an efficiency machine, so to save those precious resources, it actively works to automate your life.
We call this energy-saving trick chunking, and it leads us directly into what we call the autopilot trap. Here's how it works. Your brain takes repeated actions and packages them up, storing them as automated scripts in the basal ganglia. Because these habit loops fire right in that fast 500 millisecond window, they bypass your slow, rational prefrontal cortex entirely. This is exactly why you can drive 5 miles down the highway and suddenly realize, whoa, I don't remember seeing a single car, or why you pick up your phone just to check the time and somehow find yourself mindlessly scrolling social media 10 minutes later. It's not a lack of willpower. Your autopilot is simply faster than your conscious will.
And oh boy, things get even more complicated when we introduce pressure. When you enter a brutal stress loop, your logical prefrontal cortex, your main center for self-control, actually powers down and becomes less active. But at the exact same time, your impulsive amygdala and your dorsal striatum get amplified. They become the boss. This means when your willpower is at its absolute lowest, you are neurologically forced to fall back on your most deeply grooved, comfortable, and, let's be honest, usually unhelpful habits. Just knowing a habit is bad doesn't help one bit if the logic takes 2 seconds to boot up, but the bad habit completes in half a second.
So, all right, this leaves us with a pretty heavy question. If your brain decides first and stress actively disables your logic center, is there any hope at all? Are we just totally doomed to be passengers on this runaway train of biological impulses? Thankfully, no, absolutely not. Now that we understand the biological problem, we can actually start to look at a very practical solution.
And the solution hinges on this incredibly cool concept: free won't. Yes, won't, not will. Researchers like Libet suggested that while we might not initiate the initial impulse to act, that readiness potential we talked about, we absolutely possess the ability to veto it. Free won't is your ability to intercept the action in that tiny, brief gap between the brain's electrical activity and the actual onset of physical movement. That fraction of a second, that is your true window of power. If you can learn to widen that pause, you can actually train your prefrontal cortex to intercept the autopilot. Before we get to the steps, I really want you to take this next point to heart. It is so important. Your bad habits are neural circuits. They are not character flaws, period. We really have to move past this whole myth of raw willpower. Beating yourself up because you gave into a craving or lost your temper, it's pointless, because just understanding the problem doesn't change anything at the circuit level. To actually change your behavior, you need targeted neuroplasticity. You literally have to purposefully build a competing neural circuit that fires faster than your old one.
So how do we actually do that in real life? Well, let's walk through this practical habit guide step by step so you can start rewiring the circuit. Step 1, identify your cues. You have to know the specific environmental triggers that initiate your personal 500 millisecond glitch. Step 2, preload your response. You absolutely cannot wait until you're in the heat of the moment to decide what to do. Remember, your prefrontal cortex is way too slow for that. And step 3, intercept the autopilot by deploying that preloaded response right during the readiness potential phase.
Let's zoom in and break down that second step because honestly, it is your secret weapon. It's called the if-then strategy. By formulating a specific if-then plan, you are essentially pre-programming your brain like a computer. For example, if I feel the urge to snap at my partner, then I will immediately take one deep breath. Or, if I impulsively open a new browser tab, then I will stand up and stretch. By deciding your exact reaction in advance, you are building a faster competing neural circuit. You are literally beating the glitch to the punch before the old habit even has a chance to fire. You completely transition from being a passive spectator to the active executive of your own choices.
Now, as you practice this, remember to build what I like to call the armor of indifference. Look, the whole problem here is that we expect perfectly rational behavior from our highly irrational, neurologically driven brains. We've got to stop taking our immediate split-second reactions so personally. They are just circuits. They were built by millions of years of human evolution and your own past experiences. So your task now is simply to read the neural circuit, acknowledge it, and veto it, rather than spiraling into that awful negative guilt trip narrative you usually tell yourself afterward.
Remember, where your attention goes, your neural wiring follows. Guard your attention like it's absolute gold. Because if you can intercept that 500 millisecond glitch, you aren't just changing a bad habit, you are literally rewiring the biological architecture of your own free will. So the next time you find yourself reaching for your phone or feeling your temper flare up, just pause and ask yourself, who is really making this choice? Your biology or you? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. We are just getting started in decoding the extraordinary science of you, so stick around and I'll catch you in the next one.